So then moving on to like exercise order, and now we've kind of understood the select why, like how we select things. We can actually talk about the order of exercises. So um, this should said order. I literally just copied and pasted this because it's just important. It's just basically repeated from the last one because they are just important. Different types of movement. So you've got single joint movement, multi-joint movement. I can imagine you can already think of like the types of things that is. So obviously it's just one movement, single joint. It's one joint moving at one time. Bicep curls, tricep extensions, lateral raise. There is a really focused target on the muscle here, right? This is like very specific. There's a little bit less fatigue with these movements because there's less joints involved, or sorry, less muscles involved, less general demand on energy involved. There's a potential for less growth, but it is better for rep ranges and step progressions, which is why it's like almost like it's not the cake, it's the frosting, and the frosting's still a big part of the cake because a bare cake is not very nice, but it's like the frosting, right? And this is where we lead into multi-joint. So the multi-joint movements, obviously, everything that moves multiple joints at once, squats, bench press, any compound movement. This is really good for load progressions. This is where you can get strong and build that like foundations of strength. What's nice about building foundations of strength is it then carries over into the single joint movements, which are better for rep and set progressions, which then potentially can just lead into like a ball of hypertrophy, right? And building muscle. There's a greater chance of stimulus in these exercises, but there's a greater chance of like systemic fatigue, which is what we talked about, the stimulus fatigue ratio last time. So you couldn't just do like a whole, you could. I wouldn't recommend it. Just do a whole like session of compound movements, right? You'd be wrecked. It's a little bit less precise of a stimulus, but this should be the core of your training program because I think that 9.9 out of 10 people like just need to like get bigger and grow. So multi-joint movements are going to be really, really good, and then maybe get a little bit more specific with the single joint. So this is how to like select the order, right? In my opinion, and this it can go different ways, and I'll explain why. So compound movements generally are going to go first in terms of when we begin the quote unquote like this is where we get this is like progression now. This is where we're going to get strong and progress. Because your energy is really high and your performance is at its highest and your focus is its highest, and you really want to like focus in on those big bang for your buck movements while you're fresh. And you want to begin with those like weakest movements first. So, generally like incline first. You maybe want to do quads first because you need them to grow, for example. And I'd always aim in the heavier rep ranges. Heavy for me is like 8 to 20. So you'll see most of your sets, guys, will be either 6 to 10, maybe, probably not, but like 8 to 12 on those heavier sets, maybe something like that. And you don't use intensity techniques on compound lifts, really. Maybe every now and again, but I would recommend against it. And then single joint lifts. So you can do these first, and some of you are going to have these programmed first, maybe a pec deck, maybe some lateral raises. But the thing about those is, and single joint movements in general, they're low fatigue. So in the case of like a lateral raise or a pec deck before a big bench press, we're doing this to get fluid into the muscle and to feel the muscle more. And if you struggle with mind to muscle connection, we put that first. And it doesn't take away so much energy from it. And then obviously you don't need the energy to do the pec deck after because you've already done it. Another thing is you're trying to challenge exercises in really short ranges, and you do have, which just means fully contracted, and you do have some exercises that are better at doing that. And they get harder to do that the later you do it in the workout because you're tired, which is why sometimes single joint lifts come first. And then, of course, you've got supersets, drop sets, intensifiers. These would always generally be at the end. They really just like throw a load of fatigue extra, but you could use them for like peak volume if you really wanted to. Like if you didn't have enough time in the sessions or whatever, you could use those. They're very, very good for like time approach. And I'll do this with a lot of my busy guys and girls, is I'll give them like more supersets a little bit earlier so you get done quicker because the fatigue gets more quicker. Exercise variety. So unfortunately you got to stick with it. It is fun like to shop it up every single week, but like I'd really stick to the same plan for like weeks or months on it. Movement patterns are different. It's worth mastering a movement pattern before you progress, and you can definitely see progress in the logbook, which can like give you motivation. And when you go in there, you do 100 kilos for 10, and next week you come in and do 100 kilos for 12. You go, I've got more muscle, like, and it's a good motivation. Having a plan is going to be much better than just winging it. And that thing about movement patterns, like your brain learns a movement. You ever dribble a basketball, you ever kick a football, you ever throw, your brain knows that. You can pick up anything and throw it the same. Your brain will do that. And when you start to do the same movement every single week, and you'll get very good at that movement, and then you get good at recruiting muscle in that movement. When you do want to change it up, here's some things for you, right? So when linear progression stalls, so you do not progress for 3 or 4 weeks in a row, but everything else is in place. So all the other exercises are fine. It's just this one exercise, right? You're still sleeping well, eating well. Swap it out. If you hate it, swap it out. Day one. You don't need to do a movement you don't hate. And that's what I say to you guys when I'm saying, is there anything you don't like to do? No? Okay. If you've been using the same movement pattern for a long, long, long time, you just think, fuck, I've run this into the ground. I've done that many times. Obviously, when you bodybuild for 10 plus years, just swap it out. If your time constraints or daily routine changes, right, you become a dad or a daughter. What did I just say? I wish on these I could end them and re-record, but I'm not going back 6 minutes. So, well, maybe become a dad, job commitments, change jobs, change locations, travel. So let's summarize. Picking exercises, compound movements first, really. They're the main core of the workout. Single joints are the tip of the iceberg at the end to increase volume due to the stimulus fatigue ratio. Be mindful of those big movements, try not to double up on them so much. But you can figure out your tolerance, and this is why I always sometimes will give people a couple of compounds just to see their tolerance. Intensify is really only in off season, not while deficit. Stick with movements for 8+ weeks before considering a change. Unless you hate it, don't change it. That is important. Yeah. So it is important. So worth learning a little bit about it. Obviously, you're here and you've got a coach, so you're already doing it. It can be done effectively. Consider these tips, right? So compound movements first. Be mindful. It's the same one. Anyway, this is a poor one, wasn't it? We'll see you soon, guys.